Welcome to Crushgasm, the podcast dedicated to the highs and lows of crushes. From their first to their worst, we're going to cover them all with a cascade of characters, including our guest today, someone who knows it's always nice to make new friends, David Dollar, proud Papa Bear, podcaster, and travel planner, and all-around pop culture guru, who is here to talk not only about his two shows, the Main Street Electrical Podcast and the Deucecast movie show, but also his live-action Disney crush on the most enchanting of them all, Amy Adams. David, how are you?
I am doing wonderful, Kendra. So nice to meet you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for asking me to come on the show.
Of course, I'm excited because I actually never seen this movie until this week. And I was pleasantly surprised. So I'm really excited to talk about it. But before we do, before we fall through this magical sewer portal that was in the movie, can you tell people where they can find you and your shows online?
Absolutely. I have two podcasts, mainly. The Deucecast movie show, and it's just a movie podcast. We advertise it once a week or whatever. We're actually entering, we're hitting episode 600 coming in a couple of weeks, which is crazy. And then my main focus is the Main Street Electrical Podcast. That's Disney and travel podcast, and you can find me basically on Instagram at The Magic on a Dollar.
Well, we'll put those up and we'll look out for those. And I'm gonna do one more detour before we get to the Main Street crush, since this is this crush didn't start till like the 2000s. I want to know, did you have like any Disney crushes before this, like growing up?
You know, honestly, I did when I was this is kind of funny because when I was 8 years old, 7 or 8, sometime in the late 80s, a little older, I had a big crush on Haley Mills because I saw her in The Parent Trap. Now, my 7-year-old brain didn't wrap around the fact that she was 40 at the time of 1987 or 88, because I saw her as like, 12 years old in this movie, and I'm like 7 or 8. And I'm like, she's so cute. So that was probably my first Disney crush, was Haley Mills in The Parent Trap specifically.
That happened with another guest. It was their Star Wars crush, and obviously they were alive in the 70s when the originals came out, so watching them way later in life, they didn't understand that Luke Skywalker wasn't still that young guy.
Right.
And she like went, and I think they went to like a museum or some type of attraction, and she was like, wait, what? He
That's
was
awesome.
like this. So you watched Enchanted like 15 or so years ago, and like I gotta admit, I just watched it this week, and it's pretty hard not to immediately love her character. Was it instantaneous for you?
Kind of, and I won't go into full detail unless you want me to later, but I had a series of Hollywood crushes, kind of just one at a time. It was never these are the 5 crushes I have right now. So it was a series of crushes, and Ashley Judd was my crush for the longest time through the late 90s, early 2000s. And it was just one of those, I was a movie fan, a big Disney fan, and I saw Amy in Enchanted, talking like, we're best friends, me and Amy, saw her in Enchanted. And then I went back and saw some of her previous films. She had done 2 or 3 since then. And I'm like, I adore her. I love her. And ever since then, she has been my Hollywood crush, and a lot of my friends know, but so whenever they respond to a post I put up in a GIF or something, they'll always throw up an Amy Adams GIF from Enchanted or whatever, because people know that Dave and Amy are together in some Hollywood weird world.
And you liked Disney as a kid, but this movie, you said this crush sort of took things, it seems, to another level. What do you think struck a chord about Giselle and Enchanted overall that like pushed you further down this like rabbit hole into this Disney wonderland?
Well, like most Disney fans, I like Disney movies and Disney films, but I loved Enchanted because that was really the first time that Disney had kind of made fun of itself. Shrek had done that years before with some of the stuff they did with the princesses and kind of a satirical look at the Disney formula. But a lot of things, there's a lot of jokes in Enchanted that make fun of the whole, like, I'm going to start singing in the middle of the park out of nowhere, and the prince jumps off the bridge and starts singing and gets run over immediately by the bikes, and there's a lot of that going on. And I think that's what struck a chord with me in this movie, that I'm like, this movie's a little different. It's not just your typical, yes, the princess does meet the prince and fall in love, but it's not your typical, like, I'm in danger now and now I'm going to have a romance. There's a lot more quirky things that happened along the way. And she's just, the reason I liked Amy Adams in this one, struck a chord in here, it was because she's so talented. The music is fun, and she just portrayed that so great. And if you see her in other films, you can see that she's got a ton of range. There's a lot of things she's done in various other films that are totally not Giselle. But just watching her and just having I was so entertained by that movie, and just watching her, just her screen presence, I was like, I like this girl. I like her a lot.
Yeah, she's very infectious, but I could see like if people that don't enjoy like happiness, I could see them seeing this character as off-putting, but not me. I just loved it. She was like if you took like Zooey Deschanel's character in New Girl and like she had a baby with a book of fairy tales. This was Giselle.
Right?
And it's her positive nature. It was just something that I think like I've just been craving lately after the past few years and the constant wave of bad news. In hindsight, do you think that like you were also seeking that like level of positivity when you watched Enchanted for the first time, or watching it even in the years like that followed?
I think so. And I've always been someone who looks at movies as entertainment. There are a few movies I think that you look at and you're like, wow, that really speaks to me in a different way. But mostly movies to me are just entertaining films and they're escapism. And I think, even then, especially nowadays, it's the kind of movie that you get to watch it for 2 hours. You can just put aside the world and just involve yourself in this world of Andalasia. And there's the good girl, there's Giselle, and there's the prince, Robert, and there's the other prince, the James Marshall character. And then there's the bad, the villain. And it's just a very like, I'm enjoying this fantasy for 2 hours and not worrying about what's going on in the rest of the world. And I think honestly, escapism is important in our lives, whether it's this movie or other Disney films or other films in general. Finding films that make you feel good, that make you happy. I think those are so important right about now, especially to keep our minds not so just entrenched in what's going on in the world.
But from the escapism, I like the realism of Amy Adams in this, because like the close-ups, I could tell she wasn't this like young 20-something-year-old playing the role. She looked like around someone my age, and I really appreciated they just made her look so real. I don't know if that appealed to you as well, but there was something like, I don't know, just like charming about that, because you don't see that a lot in movies. They try to de-age them, look at Indiana Jones, but it's like they kept her so real. I loved it.
Yeah, I same way. I mean, and Amy is actually a year older than I am. And so, and I just had a birthday, and so did she.
Happy birthday!
And so I think for me, there's like a parallel right there. Like she's a year older than me. We're kind of there together. I don't want to say we've grown up together, but the last 15 years, our ages have been about the same as obvious. And I think that's part of it too. And I can look around and like I love Elizabeth Olsen as well. She's kind of a Hollywood crush, kind of on the side. But she's also like 32, so there is a difference in 48 and 32 versus Amy's 49. I'm 48. We're right there together. This is great.
Yeah. Oh, I was so surprised by her age too. When I did look it up, I was like, well, how old is she? And I was like, wow, okay, she's looking great. But I'm going to fast forward to today, and it's been almost 2 decades. Would you say Giselle still sits high on your Mount Rushmore of like Disney princesses?
She's my favorite Disney princess. The only caveat to that is that she's not really represented in the parks. And I've never fully understood it. I've understand it to be, it was a rights issue, like a facial rights issue with Amy Adams and the Disney company, and they never quite made that work. My other favorite Disney princess per se is Meg from Hercules, the cartoon version. And she's also not in the park very much either. They just don't have her out very much. But yeah, I mean, I would love, like, Giselle's my bucket list. I would love to see Giselle in the park. I would plan a trip around that. I'll be honest with you. If I knew that she was going to be there for a weekend or a week or something, I would just to have it off my bucket list.
Have they never placed Enchanted in the parks in any way?
She was in the character of Giselle was in a couple of parades early on, 2008, 2009. And I want to say the character came back a couple of years ago just as maybe as a parade character or something quick, but she's never been a meet and greet kind of character like you would find with Snow White or Aurora or Belle or anything. And a lot of these characters, like Meg, they kind of go through a rotation where, after a certain amount of time, you won't see certain princesses anymore except for special events. Raya, I think, is a lot like that. Raya is available now, but I would say in a year or two, she will be kind of into that whole, we'll bring her out for, special parties and special events, but not on a regular basis kind of thing. And so Giselle and Meg both have been kind of the same way. And Giselle's never really fully been represented in the parks, which to me is sad.
Yeah, I mean, because she is like, I get Amy Adams in the face thing, but she also is animated and part of
Yeah,
the
that's
movie.
true.
And so I like, but shout out to Meg from Hercules,
Mhm.
one of my favorites too. I have this little figurine I've had since the movie came out. It has gone through college and cross country moves. It's on my bookshelf. I will never get rid of it. It's one of my like little toys that's like so
I love it.
cherished to me.
Love it.
She's and there's, there's talks of a live action Hercules, and there's like debates online who it should be. I'm
Right.
interested to see who they'll finally cast in it, but we'll see. We'll see. So, if Giselle were to have like a Disney princess crew made up of her and three other princesses, who do you think she'd like roll with? Who would she kick it with?
I think she would kick it with Rapunzel. I think Rapunzel is fun. She's light. She's crazy. She has a good time. I think she would kick it with Merida. I also think Merida is and I love Merida because Merida doesn't need no man. She just has her good head on her shoulders. She's great at adventure, and she's a warrior princess, and I love her. And probably Belle, maybe Belle, because Belle's very studious. Belle's very focused, and Belle would be the one to kind of keep the group when they're all at Epcot together during the food and wine. Belle would be the one keeping the group moving. Hey, you've had too much, Rapunzel. Let's keep moving. You can have margarita at Mexico. You don't need another one right now. I think Belle would be that kind of person.
As soon as you said Belle, that's exactly what I thought. Because every group friend has the mom friend who's like
Right.
keeping you together, making sure you're on time. I could see Merida being the one that's like gonna get them into trouble. Like she's gonna like fight or something. Things got
I
out
could
of
see
control.
that. Absolutely.
They should do like a girls trip parody with like Disney princesses. I think those four would be really funny in that.
Oh, that would be hilarious because I feel like Giselle would be the character that's coming to Disney for the first time. Maybe she's been with the company forever, but she's never been to Disney World, and so she would be the one freaking out of all the cool. Oh my gosh, look at that coaster! And wow, look what they did at the mountain! And just she'd be the one that everybody would smile at because she's experiencing all the magic for the very first time.
I could see it. SNL, get on it. I think it'd be
Absolutely.
funny when the writer strike's over, of course. But one last thing about Enchanted that perhaps you could help me out with. Why did Susan Sarandon's character continue to try to murder everyone even after Robert's kiss was the one to break the spell? And it was clear, like, Giselle wasn't marrying Prince Edward. I was very confused. She was just like being evil just to be mean.
Well, I think at that point she was probably angry and like, okay, well, you're going to do this to me. Well, fine. I'm going to take all of you out. My best guess on that would be that, once you try to do something and then you realize, okay, you failed, but the adrenaline's still going, the adrenaline's still pumped, and you're like, well, fine. If I can't win, then nobody wins because she's a sociopath. She was a psychopath villain. She would not be the one to go, you know what? You're right. You won this time. I'm going to leave now. It's more of a fine. I'm taking everybody out. We're all going down for this.
That makes sense. She was like, well, I've been this deep. Might as well keep going type of thing.
Exactly.
But I really did enjoy it. I'm so glad you picked this because I don't think I would have ever turned this on like maybe years from now. But I was really, really pleasantly surprised, and I was enthralled by this movie. I didn't know where it was going to go. So I like that.
I was going to say, it's kind of timeless. It would fit well in 2008, and 15 years later, it's still good. I mean, it's still a movie that's relevant, and there's not a whole lot. I mean, technology-wise, there's not a whole lot in the movie that you're looking at going, oh my gosh, that's so 2008 ago. I mean, it's a fun story that I think even 25 years from now, people can watch, much like they watch Peter Pan or Swiss Family Robinson or Mary Poppins. You still enjoy the film itself, even all these years later.
I would say I really put it at the top of my Disney movies really quick. So there you go.
Love that.
So you watched Enchanted, and then in a move that I consider the right thing to do once a crush develops, you went back and obsessively watched everything Amy Adams had done before. I totally do that. And since then, she's added so much more to her resume, like Superman, The Muppets, just like Arrival. Were there any roles she did before or after Enchanted that had you seen those first, you would have crushed like the same level as Giselle?
Well, I'm not sure if I'd seen, because she hadn't done a ton before Enchanted. And some of her earlier work is not great. It's one of those where she's great in it, but the movie itself is not great. And I think there's one film out there, and I can't remember the name of it, that I have not seen that she's in. So I've gone back and watched even little small cameos and bit parts in some movies she was in. She was in a movie with Fred Savage called The Last Run, and the movie is terrible. She's in it for maybe 3 minutes, but I watched it because she's in it. I think her biggest kind of break was a movie called Junebug, and that's where she played like a pregnant young girl who is kind of taken in by her family and kind of some of the travails they had to go through. Loved her in that. That's not a crush-worthy character because she's got a lot of problems going on. But I loved her in Junebug. But Talladega Nights, going back and watching that now after having seen Enchanted and with my long history with Amy, I mean, it's a whole nother level on Talladega Nights because she is the studious. She's the epitome of having like and She's All That, where you got the glasses and the hair and the ponytail and the frumpy clothes, and nobody looks at her, but you take the glasses off and throws her hair back, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, she's so hot." That's exactly Amy Adams in this movie. So yeah, Talladega Nights is definitely one that I think that I'm like, yeah, if had I seen this, I think initially I'd have been like, "What's up, Amy? How you doing?"
I heard it's a class. That's another one I haven't seen, but maybe one day. Maybe I'll go check it out after this, since now I'm like on an Amy Adams kick right now. So Enchanted, it isn't the first Disney movie to intertwine that animation and live action, but again, I gotta say this is pretty perfect. And again, my new favorite. But since Giselle, they've done like a lot of live action princesses via the remakes of old movies. What are your thoughts on those? Because the reaction to them, it varies.
It does. And I'm one of those people that I don't go into movies going, okay, I'm going to find this message. I know there's got to be a message in here somewhere. I go to see if I'm entertained. I think there have been a couple that have been very good. I think Cinderella was the first one. I really liked Cinderella. Lily James, Kate Blanchett as Lady Tremaine, the Wicked Stepmother, was fantastic. Some of them have been up and down. I'm just okay on The Little Mermaid, not because of Halle Berry. I think her voice is so good. I'm sure she's such a good singer. I didn't like what they did with all the other characters. I thought some of the other characters were not that great. So overall, to me, the movie suffered. I thought Aladdin was a lot of fun. I thought Beauty and the Beast was fun at the time, but it's not a movie that I'll go back and rewatch. So I have my I don't know that they've been, to me personally, I don't know that I've loved all the remakes that have come out. One remake that I did enjoy was Pete's Dragon, and that's not a princess, but they did a live action remake of that one, and they made it just different enough where it wasn't a carbon copy of the original story. And I don't like the original cartoon Pete's Dragon. Loved the remake. I thought the remake was so well done. I don't know what they're planning on doing with some of the other ones coming up. I know there's a Snow White movie coming up. There's a whole lot of things going on with that. And I think Hercules is kind of in the pipeline. I mean, they're looking at doing a Lilo and Stitch live action. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I would love some original storytelling, maybe like 2 or 3 original films for every one live action. But, they don't call me when those decisions are made.
But as a Disney historian, I don't have to explain what the Disney eras are, like Renaissance, Bronze, Golden. But do you think with all these remakes and stuff, they're in their recycle era right now?
I think so. And I'm not sure exactly what they're going to call this era that we're in, because starting with Princess and the Frog and Rapunzel, we kind of started in what's called the post-Renaissance. And that was like the early 2000s was kind of, I don't want to say a dark period, but it was like the kind of a smaller age with your movies that weren't that popular, Home on the Range and Brother Bear and movies like that. And then you hit this massive string of just incredible films like Wreck-It Ralph and Frozen and Big Hero 6 and Zootopia, Moana, and all those movies. I'm not sure that we're in that era now, and I don't know what era we're in, I'll be honest with you. And I don't know if it's an economy thing where Disney is like, you know what, we're trying to make sure that we're budgeting correctly, so let's just do some properties we already have versus trying to create some new things. I don't really know what they're doing, I'll be honest with you. Strange World to me was not very good when it came out. I think Encanto, the one before, was kind of, in my mind, Encanto was the last of that era of that Big Hero 6, Zootopia, Moana kind of revival era, I guess. So I don't know. I honestly don't know what they're going to do. I have no clue. It reminds me, honestly of the era that we were in the early 80s, late 70s to early 80s, where we look back now and we love Robin Hood, we love the Aristocats, we love the Rescuers. Back then, those movies were not celebrated. Those movies did not make a lot of money, and Disney was in danger of shutting down. And they brought in, and this is my Disney historian coming in, my opinion, of course. They brought in Michael Eisner from another studio to kind of renovate everything, and he just kind of took over, brought some people in, and just suddenly we had Little Mermaid, and there we go. And I think it might take some of those kind of decision making, bringing in a fresh eye for somebody for animation to say, you want you to come in, see what you can do here, and kind of do a turnaround, because I don't know where we're going to go. And as you mentioned before, the writer's strike is not helping, because I know Wish comes out in November. It looks great. Will it still come out in November because of the strike right now? I have no clue.
It's so weird to me that the Bronze Age, as they call it, that 70s, early 80s wasn't popular at the time. Because when I was little, I know I grew up with the Renaissance, so obviously I was spoiled as a child. But I really did. I think because my older brother was born in 75, and my mom her parenting idea was like, just shove whatever that kid liked on this kid. So I did really love those movies. Like Robin Hood is my favorite Disney movie. So I'm always like, why didn't they like these? These were fun. I also love the animal movies way more, I think, than Disney, and then the princess movies. I'm not a fan of like the original princesses until Ariel came in, because she was cool.
Well, I mean, and the original princesses, they have their charm and they have their place in history. So, I'm not one to go back and go, well, I don't like that character, because it's a whole new world of what Snow White and what Ariel had. And there are a lot of problems with a movie like Sleeping Beauty. Looking at it through 2023 eyes, it's one of those I watch and enjoy the movie for what it was in 1959, not now, because that, as well as a lot of classic films, animated or not, Disney or not, you look at and go, I don't know that that's a good movie. I think that's, I watched, not to go on a rabbit trail, but I watched Some Like It Hot with Marilyn Monroe, Jack Lemmon, Tony Quinn. Incredible movie. Tony Curtis, excuse me. Great movie, so much fun, a lot of comedy. Again, a movie that you probably could not make today because of some of the jokes that are in there and some of the way that they talk to women and whatever. It made for great comedy in the 60s, and I appreciated it then, but it's kind of the same thing. Is I have a hard time looking at movies like that. I have to take off my 2023 glasses and look at it through, okay, this is what they tried to do. Some movies are egregious, but with the earlier princesses, I'm not a fan of all of them, but I appreciate them for what they were in Disney history.
Yeah, I like the stories. They were just like, to me, they just were boring. But then again, I loved Bambi as a kid. Like, I thought I was like that kid that was like, the score to this movie is genius. Like, why was I saying that at like 5 years old? I don't know.
Well, see, in that manner, I don't like Snow White. I can't handle the music in Snow White. Her voice just drives me up the wall. And I'm just like, oh, it has nothing to do with the way the story lays out. I'm just like, she's singing at the wishing well. And I'm, oh my gosh, I want to just throw myself out the window. No, please stop singing.
Yeah. That's how I was. I was like, nah, don't want her. But so, like I said, I just watched Enchanted, so I haven't got to check out Disenchanted. So, is it worth it? Should I check it out tonight? This week?
Disenchanted. I think it's worth it to see the continuation of the story. I thought the movie was good. I felt as if I really wish they had waited another year or two and put that into theaters, and then made it shorter. It's like 2 hours and 10 minutes long. I like where they were going with it, because there was something that turned Giselle into the villain, and so she had to kind of the characters around her had to rally around her and kind of turn her good again. So it's a fun play on that whole thing. It was a little too long, and it was missing some of the charm, and I think it was missing the charm because it's on Disney Plus. I felt like it got dumped there. I felt in a world where there's no COVID, that movie probably would have gone to the theater a couple of years ago. It felt out of place to me watching it on TV for the first time, and that's not a movie I've even watched since. I watched it the first day it was out, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is fine. And I've probably seen Enchanted twice since I've seen Disenchanted when it came out last year.
I don't know. I'll have to check it out.
I would say watch it, but watch it going into it going, you know what, I'm going to watch her story so I can finish her story, versus I'm excited for a great movie. It's good. I don't think it's great. That's just me.
It'll probably be like Turning Red. It took me that was the first Disney movie it ever took me a few days to get through. Like, I would put it on, I watch it and, I'm like, and then I come back, which everyone was surprised because like that's my era, the boy band thing, that's my thing.
Right.
So I was surprised that I wasn't like initially glued. But with Enchanted originally dropping like almost 20 years ago now, if they were going to remake it with a new cast of actors, who do you think would be good enough like currently to step into Amy Adams' role?
Oh, that's a great question. I probably should have been prepared for this. So I think for Amy Adams, my first thought was Jessica Chastain. However, she's also like 44. So you're looking for somebody in their 20s. I don't know if like an Elle Fanning would work. I don't know if a Dakota Fanning would work. If maybe they don't have the right fit. This is a great question. And off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of who might fit that role, and I'm actually not sure. Because I'm trying to think of all the actresses in their 20s that might work in there. And maybe a Florence Pugh, but I don't know if she can sing. So I don't think this would work with lip syncing. I just don't think it works like that with that. Maybe a Samara Weaving, somebody like that. If you wanted to change it up a little bit, maybe a Halle Berry and see if she can do it. See what happens with her. A Little Mermaid, put her in Enchanted and see, because that voice would definitely do it. So that would be a great take on it. But if you're going to do it, I would love to see the story changed up slightly, not just a carbon copy remake of the original film, which again goes to some of the Disney remakes, is they're doing exactly what the cartoon did. And I'm like, how about we change it up a little bit? We can, although Little Mermaid added a song where Prince Eric sings, and I'm like, okay, well, that was unnecessary. So maybe I'm getting what I wished for and I don't want it now. I don't know.
I did an episode Life's But a Song. It's all about musicals, everything, and we had planned I was going to come on for The Little Mermaid, the new one, and he was like, John Riley, the host, was like, I did not like that, and I was like, it was kind of like Glee, like it was very theatrical. It was like it was a little off, right. But I appreciated that they let Prince Eric be more than a hot piece of ass for the first time in his.
Yeah, they gave him a story at some point, which was nice.
Tried. I have it on my workout playlist. It kind of gets me like, you're just like, I'm running on these hills. I'm gonna try my best. Is it the best song? No, but right. I appreciate Prince Eric's effort. I actually thought Kiernan Shipka, I think's how you say it. She played the new Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I thought she would be good if they ever tried to remake this, maybe in a few years when she is a little older. But I think she's in her 20s now, so maybe her late 20s, because I just think she's great.
It just occurred to me too that there's an actress named Sophia Lillis, and she's done several things. She was in there was a mini series on HBO called Sharp Objects, and it's based on a fantastic book. And she played a young Amy Adams in this movie, like the teenage version of Amy Adams' character, and she was great. And so now I'm like, I don't know if Sophia Lillis can sing again, but if she can, that might be an idea for you. So, because she also, in the movie, the second chapter of the movie It, the horror film, she played a young Jessica Chastain. Well, actually, the first chapter, she played the character that Jessica Chastain would go on to play later. So that's an idea too. I mean, I think Sophia Lillis might be somebody that would be might have the looks at least. I don't know about the charisma, because you'd want to have somebody that would just have so much fun on screen. And I think that's part of the love of Enchanted. And I think when you watch a movie closely, I think you can kind of tell, are they having fun making this movie, or is this movie a slog and this is the paycheck and they're just getting through it? And I think everybody in Enchanted is just having so much fun making this film. I feel like you can just tell they're just having a good time on set. And not that everything is easy making movies. I know making movies are very hard. There's challenging days, and I get that. But I feel like there are some films like Enchanted, you can just tell that everybody's having a good time together. They're having a good time, performing. They're having a good time singing the songs, and just, they're just there. They're excited and happy to be making this movie.
I mean, that big musical number in Central Park would look so much fun. Patrick Dempsey, my favorite thing, is like how you said, just making fun of it, because that's how I am with musicals. Like, how does everyone know the dancing and everyone knows the song? Like, it freaks me out a little bit.
Exactly. Well, and him turning around going, why are you singing? And everybody starts singing, and he's like, what's going on here? And then later on, he's drumming to the beat, and then you realize what he's doing, and so yeah, I think that's hilarious to me.
And yes, I think that girl, Sophia, if she can sing, should be really good. She's just a really good actor. She was in a really good Netflix show that sadly Netflix was like one season and done, even though, it's set up for a second season. They were like, nah, because that's what Netflix does.
Right.
But is James Marsden in Disenchanted? I just gotta know.
He is.
Okay.
He and Idina Menzel, their characters are married, as in we saw the first one at the end of the first one. Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen this 15-year-old movie. Yeah, they return. They both return actually, and they take a part in resolving the conflict at the end of the movie with Amy Adams' character Giselle and what happens to her. So yeah, most of the cast is back.
All right. I was really happy that Nancy got to be with the prince, because I was really sad that I was like, oh, she's going to be left alone. But I did see the sparks sort of fly. So I did kind of see that part coming. But I was really relieved, because I was like, I hope she gets something at the end.
Right.
So good for her. So before we talk more about what you have going on, I want to do our own fairy tale. Let's say you and Amy met and it was magical. What do you think your lives would be like? Would it be a happily ever after?
Well, I have a caveat in saying that, I have been wonderfully happily married to my beautiful wife for 20 years. So there is anybody listening to that, just know that anything I say going forward, I am fully, there's no chance that Amy Adams and I are going to be together. My wife knows this too. It's actually kind of funny, because I have what's called the Colin Firth Club for my wife, because Colin Firth is my wife's big Hollywood crush. And I feel as if there's three actors, and I'll get to your question in a second, but there's three actors: Hugh Jackman, Robert Downey Jr., and Colin Firth, that if they called her up and said, I'd like you to run away with me, she would say no, but she might hesitate for about 3 or 4 seconds before she said no. She might be like no, I can't do that, Same thing with Amy Adams. I might be like, Amy, but in a different world, in a different multi-universe, Amy and I meet early on when she's first getting started. I think we would be at least best friends, or at least really, really good friends, because our personalities, and of course I've seen all the clips and stuff and everything. I think our personalities really, really jibe. I probably would ask her out. She'd probably say no, but if she said yes, who knows? Who knows? I have no idea. I know her husband is Italian. He's a good-looking dude. He's a talented artist, and I'm like, yeah, I can't compete with that. but who knows? I don't know. I'd like to think that I would be one of the ones she would be thanking when she finally gets an Oscar. 6-time nominee, never a winner. But who knows? That's a different universe, I guess.
Well, she should have got it for Enchanted, because it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, the Academy makes a lot of mistakes.
I think she was nominated for a Golden Globe, if I'm not mistaken. I know she's won a couple of Golden Globes for a few movies, but never won an Oscar. And just waiting for that one role to really take hold and be like, that's it. And my Amy has got an award.
You're gonna be like cheering. That's me.
Oh yeah. Oh definitely.
That's me this year with Ryan Gosling. I'm just kidding. I am hoping for best song.
Right.
Oh God. And I heard there's some buzz around Glenn Howerton from It's Always Sunny for the Blackberry movie, and It's Always Sunny's been my number one show for a long since it started. So I will cry if he gets nominated. I don't know if he'll win. I don't know if it's a drama or not. So I do know that Oppenheimer guy is taking every award he is in this category.
I could see that. If Glenn got nominated, I think the nomination would be the reward, because I imagine either putting on my Deucecast movie show podcast eyes on, I would imagine Cillian Murphy's going to win the Oscar for Oppenheimer, deservedly so. Yeah. Or there's a Leonardo movie coming out called Killers of the Flower Moon, directed by Scorsese. And the buzz around that is top notch. So it might be a race between Cillian Murphy and Leonardo DiCaprio. That's how I see it right now. Who knows what could happen between now and then?
Leonardo, I think it's Oppenheimer. That's not my type. That's not my cup of tea usually, but I was so into it. I usually 3 hours. I was like, this is going to be just torture for me. And I loved every second of it. Even Emily Blunt was really good too. And like the 5 minutes she's in total, but so good.
I think, Cillian Murphy was great, because he's in just about every single frame of the movie. But you're right. I thought Emily Blunt, and I love Emily Blunt in everything she's in. I thought she was wonderful, and Robert Downey Jr. was fantastic. And I think, honestly, he's probably going to win supporting actor for that part. He was so good, a little smarmy as the movie goes on. Again, I don't want to spoil this brand new movie for people if you haven't seen it, but his character does take a turn, and I think he's just so electric on the screen.
And when you can play a character that people hate so much, you did a good job.
Yeah, exactly.
Which he did. I was like, this guy's up. I was really God, that was a good movie. But we're going to talk more about you and what you got going on. And we're going to start with Disney. You said you went to Disney World as a kid in the 80s, and it is hard to deny a theme park at that age. But when did you start to realize that you weren't just someone who liked to go to Disneyland and Disney World? You were someone who wanted to like sort of center your life around it, and also the idea of travel.
Well, I went in 1982 for the very first time, and there are pictures and boxes somewhere in my home. You have those certain things that you're like, I don't need it right now, but I'd like to find it one day, and it's in a box in your house, and you just don't know where. One of those. And when I went, actually, Epcot was being built, and at 6 or 7, I just thought the whole park was in Epcot. I'm like, the whole park was in the ball. I'm like, wow, they're building a theme park in that big ball. I didn't know any better. I went again for a couple of times to Magic Kingdom in the 90s with some friends from college. We got free tickets here or there. And it was really when I met my girlfriend, who eventually became fiance and wife. Her whole family is a very Disney loving family. And I kind of sucked back into it then. So that's part of it. I also started working for the Disney store. I did it some in the 90s and then again in the 2000s, and just absolutely loved it. It really just kind of took hold. Unfortunately, our Disney store closed here in Alabama. It was one of the oldest ones in the company. And from that moment, I'm like, I love this company so much. I love what we're doing here. I want to do more with it. And again, I'm not here just to plug everything, but I became a travel agent. I specialize in Disney from that manner. And from that, and it's just been like, I do a lot of travel, but I love Disney. That's my home. That's where I go 2 or 3 times a year. And it is one of those things where people are like, you're going back again? I am going back again. Why? Because I love it. That's why. Whether I'm going with my family or my child, or I'm going with, meeting friends down there as part of our team or other friends, it's just, I get something different out of it every single time I go. And I love the magic. I love the escapism of it. I love the history. I think Walt Disney was a visionary in everything that he tried to do. And the things he succeeded in, even the things he failed in, I think were just phenomenal. I love the company. It's got a lot of problems, just like any other company in the world. So there is some of that. But overall, I just think it's a great lifestyle. I do.
And when did the idea for the Main Street Electrical podcast start to come to mind?
Well, I started my own podcast actually in the and again, we had the movie podcast since 2011. That's just me and a buddy kicking it about some movies, and we just kept going. And suddenly we look up and it's 13 years later, and we're like, wow, we've done 600 episodes. What the crap? But the Disney podcast we kind of came out where I wanted to do a podcast, so I actually created my own podcast called the Magic on a Dollar Podcast, and that's kind of the name I work with in travel. And doing a show on your own every week is very challenging. I didn't have a lot of guests on. I talked about Disney and stuff like that, but carrying a show where I'm just talking for 30 or 45 minutes by myself, it's tough. It's really tough. And I got 100 episodes in, a couple of years into it, and I decided, you know what, I need to change. I want to do something different. The show's not growing. And I talked to a friend of mine, and he told me the best thing you can do is get a female co-host, because you guys can connect, you can bounce ideas off each other, you have different perspectives on different things, do that. And I talked to my friend Jen, who actually owns the travel agency I work with, and I said, hey, do you want to do a podcast with me? And she's like, okay. So we kind of put it together, and she has her own podcast too. And it just started. We came up with the Main Street Electrical Podcast, a name played off of the Main Street Electrical Parade, which is a legendary parade in Disney parks. And it's just a fun time. Once a week, we talk about Disney and other travel, Universal, and blah, blah, blah. Matter of fact, my co-host Jen is in Costa Rica right now, so we'll be talking about that next week when she comes back. And it's just, it's a little bit of everything. We talk movies and strategy and music and just whatever comes to mind. We have different guests on. We've had, various random pop culture guests that have come on our show talking about different things with Disney. And it's a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun getting together with a friend or two. And hey, let's talk about our mutual interests like Disney. Like you and I, we're friends now. We're talking about, Enchanted and Crushes and movies and Disney. So good times.
Well, there is no denying you are a Disney adult, and I feel like these have always existed. My husband's old neighbors, they used to go annually, and they were like grandma, grandpa age. So it's not like adults loving Disney movies and the parks is like this new concept, but it seems like in the past few decade or so, they've gotten a bad rap. Why do you think that is? Like, why are we hating on Disney adults?
I think it is one of those things where a few bad apples ruin the bunch. And I think you're going to find that in any subject or anything you do. There's a few bad apples that makes everybody go, oh, we don't like any of them. And I think there are some adults that misbehave and maybe do the wrong thing in the parks or feel entitled. I hate to use the word influencers or YouTubers, but there were a few that have kind of done those kind of things in the parks that have just kind of soured everybody on the whole concept. But I think overall, I'm one of those people that if you like something, like it. I'm not going to look at you and be like, you're 48 years old. Why do you still like this? Because I do. I mean, it's just, again, I go back to the whole, like, there's a whole lot of problems in this world. If we find those things that we love, that gives us joy, and it doesn't affect anybody else, and it's giving you happiness, then go for it. That's great. And I think the same thing with Disney adults. If they dress up and people want to dress up to the nines, as long as they're not bothering anybody or really causing a problem, have at it. I think it's fantastic. And I see Disney adult costumes in the park sometimes, and I'm like, man, I wish I could do that. That is amazing. You look like you're 58 years old, and look how that is fantastic costume. And, I see the same thing with, the teenagers in the 20s and 30s or whatever. And, even when I go with people on my team, and there are a lot of women that go, and we all kind of dress similar. We kind of what's called Disney bounding, and we kind of have a similar costumes and stuff because it's fun. So yeah, unfortunately, there are a few bad apples that feel entitled to do certain things, or they feel like they're owed certain things. But if you look beyond that, you're going to find a whole world of people who just are passionate about being Disney fans, much like you would have people passionate about, sports or football teams or whatever, conventions or games or things like that. It's just Disney's a much bigger property than, say, Dungeons and Dragons. So that's why everybody sees the Disney adults and not the other adults as much.
I'm with you on that. I think if it makes you happy and you're not harming anyone, what is the harm in that?
Right.
Exactly. Just let people be happy. But I love that you mentioned Disney bounding. Such a great thing that Leslie Kay came up with and brought to life. I don't know what birthday it was, but I had this whole spreadsheet, and I made all my friends pick a character. They had to tell me what it was, so we didn't double up, and we went out to eat. I made them all Disney bound. It was so much fun. Who was I? I was Pongo. That was mine.
Fun.
I loved it. I loved the Disney bounding. I was really into it for a few years. I do kind of try to keep my outfits if I'm thinking about it. I'm like, oh, that would be cute as this. It's really fun. I like that. Who are some of your favorite characters to Disney bound?
My wife and I actually went in October for Epcot's 40th, and we dressed up basically as the contemporary. We have I had a shirt that has contemporary all over it, and she has a dress that has kind of the same kind of contemporary patterns, and us standing together, we look like a contemporary, resort kind of thing. As far as characters, I mean, there are certain characters that I like, but I like dressing up as Disney things, I guess. Putting on certain things like, the Skyliner or whatever, like a Skyliner, big Skyliner shirt, and having the same colors, or maybe having like a Disney, whatever character, like wrap around your arm or something to kind of give that whole concept of the characters on the buckets, or anything kind of fun, like different hats and things like that. I love dressing up as almost like Disney inside jokes, where if I went to a random Target with that same thing on, most people would be like, what are you wearing? But that one or two people, that's the people mover. I mean, that's my idea of Disney bounding. I love doing Disney things because as a guy, I don't have a lot of male options. I mean, I could dress up as princesses if I want to. I choose not to, but there aren't a whole lot of princes that I'm like, I'm going to dress up as Prince Philip from Sleeping Beauty. No, I don't want to do that. I feel like the girls have a lot bigger variety of characters and ideas. So I like doing different other Disney things to dress up if I can.
You like the Disney deep cuts. We'll
exactly. The stuff that it's almost like stuff for you to wear at the parks, but you probably wouldn't wear anywhere else. Not that you're ashamed of it. You just don't want to have to keep answering questions. Yes, I'm dressed up as the purple wall from Magic. Yes, it's the purple. It's the purple wall. Yeah.
I like that. When we go to conventions, sometimes you have the Batmans and the Harley Quinns, but right. I don't really like those characters. I like 90s, random movies, so no one ever knows what I am. But anyway, right. We're going to go back to the podcast because you cover, like you said, a variety of topics. But what are your personal favorite things to bring to Jen to talk about?
I love talking the parks, and I love talking Disney history. We've got a few episodes that we've done in the past where it's kind of we talk about how some of the resorts were founded, how the movies came to be. We talk about Walt and kind of some of what he was doing in the 50s when he was building Disneyland. And I love talking about history. I love the history of Disney, and just how miraculous it was that you had a man who sat on a park bench with his daughters and was like, I wish we had somewhere where families could go together. And, he he made it happen. And same kind of guy who went to, in the late 20s, he went to a meeting with his executive partners in New York City to find out that executive partner had stolen all of his characters and hired all of his animators. And on the way home, he creates a character called Mickey Mouse. And so there's so many cool things that happen with Disney history. So that's what I love talking about. But we also love talking about contemporary travel too. Like, I like helping people, talking about, like my son is autistic. My son is on the spectrum. So, one of the things we've done a couple of episodes on is taking autistic children to Disney. How do you handle that? It's more than just having an autistic, special needs pass. There's things you have to know. Where do you go, but with special diets and things like that. And, anything I can do to help people as well is fun stuff. I mean, I love that. I have fun with that. I have fun with people walking away from me going, you know what? I learned some stuff. And I'm a Disney nerd. I'm a nerd when it comes to that stuff.
And you also have another show, the Deucecast movie show, which 600 episodes. That is what a feat. But how do you approach that differently in regards to like prepping and just going into that versus your Disney show?
Well, the Deucecast is really a hobby, and it's not that I'm looking at the Disney show as like it's going to be a moneymaker. We haven't monetized it or anything, not yet. We're working on it, but with the Deucecast, it's just like I said, it's a couple of knucklehead guys just around talking about movies, and we do. This many episodes into it, we kind of have it down to a fine art. I do the editing for it, and so I kind of have all my theme songs and all my sound bites and everything in a folder, and I just kind of do a drag and drop, and it takes me 30 minutes to edit a 2-hour episode. But I approach that differently in terms of just, the topics are much bigger and much more broad because you have all of moviedom and movie history to talk about versus one particular park or theme parks or company and their movies and stuff. And so everything from, top 5 directors that are working today to who would you put on your Mount Rushmore for favorite actresses to movies that we watched when we were kids that do not hold up now. And, anything we come up with all kinds of random and varied topics. Our 600th episode, actually, we're working on, we started this 6 years ago, and it was one of those things where it kind of just stumbled into, this is what we're doing. We're trying to determine the best character of all time. So we've had random tournaments over the last 6 years with Nicolas Cage and Harrison Ford, Julia Roberts, and Denzel Washington, and kind of mirroring down to their best role and putting it all into one big tournament that we're going to have for episode 600. It's one of those, we have a good time with it. We have a Discord channel for the movie podcast, and it's built like a little following, and we just do it every Sunday night. We record it, drop it on Wednesdays, and just have a good time with it. I mean, if you ask how I approach it differently, I guess the Disney is a little more serious in terms of, I really want this to sound good and sound right. Movie podcast is like, all right, well, I messed that up. Let's keep going. So a little different.
I'm very interested in the best character because there's just so many. It's like, do you go with who's the most recognizable, who's had the most impact on pop culture?
And we've all of that. We've got 28 characters in place, and we're going to do a special episode in a few weeks to kind of fill those last roles and have a 32 role tournament and just narrow it down one by one to match by match to see what the greatest role of all time is. And it's a tournament 6 years in the making, which is not anything to be proud of. We should have wrapped this up like 3 years ago, but it's one of those filler episodes that when we need an episode, we're like, let's do the tournament. All right, that sounds good. And 6 years later, here we are.
And when it comes to traveling and being a travel planner, did it start with like Disney, or had this just been like your job and then you like got into Disney? Because that's an interesting job.
Well, it's kind of fun because it's a fun story because when I worked at the Disney store, as I mentioned, the store closed in 2010. And again, I was lost. It was one of those jobs where it actually broke my heart to lose that job. I loved that job. I was an assistant manager at our store, and I just had so much fun with that job. And that was really kind of fueling my fire for Disney as well. And when the store closed, the store in Atlanta also closed, and I knew somebody at that store, and she had called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to be a travel planner, travel agent?" I'm like, okay. This is 2013 before everything really came online. I mean, the internet existed, but it was really not nearly as digital as is now. And so, I didn't know anything. I think one year I booked 4 trips the entire year because I knew nothing, and I didn't really have mentor to kind of lead me in that. And I kind of worked through agencies and stuff, and I've been doing it since 2013. So 10 years later, I'm with Upon a Star Travel Concierge, which I will say is the greatest travel agency in the world with the greatest owner in the world. That's me being biased. And it's a lot of fun. It's a flexible job, and I work in the morning, I work in the afternoon. But the reason I love it, and I mentioned that my son is on the spectrum, he's at school right now, but it gives us time to hang out in the afternoons. So I can stop at any point in time. If most of the time I can just stop whenever I need to. If I have to do something with him, or go get to school to get him, or go to a play, or go to a function, or in the afternoons we go out and hang out together for an hour or two. We spend time together every day, and then I'll come back after dinner and finish up what I need to do. So it's not a regimented, I'm in the office from 9 to 5. It's just, okay, I'm gonna handle this problem, I'm gonna handle that problem, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'll come back to this, come back to that. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love working with people. I've done, pat myself on the back, I've done close to 800 trips, Disney and otherwise overall. And I love what I do. I really, really love what I do. And I'll keep doing it until I think maybe this is not what I should do anymore. And then I'll do something else, because I just don't think, and not everybody has this luxury. And I fully admit that. And I did not have this luxury until the last 10 or 12 years. But I'm very blessed to be in a position in my life where if I don't want to do this job anymore, I think I could probably get a job doing something else fairly easily. And so, I'm in that blessed position where I'm like, if I want to be happy in my job, and if I'm not happy in it, I can do something else. I know a lot of people don't have that, but I'm very blessed to be in that spot.
Well, it's an interesting job, and travel's always fun, especially when you get to go to a theme park as like a big thing. My family, we went once. My mom swear, I grew up in Southern California. My mom's like, I took you all the time to Disneyland when you were little. No photos of this. So I'm like, all I had was the one like Donald Duck hat with my name on it. But I was like, you could have just had someone pick that up for me. Like, what is the proof? So we went once when right after the Who Framed Roger Rabbit ride opened, and it rained. So I didn't get to ride the teacups. I was so upset. I was like, that's the one thing I wanted to do. So I didn't go again till in Southern California, grad night is always at Disneyland for most high schools. So I got to go again. Right. And then the disappointment there is the characters don't walk around on grad night, because honestly, I wouldn't put those people through that with a bunch of teenagers roaming around. And Splash Mountain was closed. So, but then I had friends that worked there. So I got to go as an adult, and I was like, finally, I'm getting my moment. Right. I remember I loved Chip and Dale. They're my favorite Disney characters. And I was like, move. I want a picture with it. I didn't do that, but funny. I was like, I made my husband stand in line and was like, I'm getting this picture.
That's great.
28 years old.
I understand that. Trust me, there have been a few characters that either I've missed in previous trips, or like for the first time they're appearing, and that I've been like, I'm going to stand here. And if I have to stand here an hour in the hot sun, I'm going to take this stupid picture. I don't even want the picture. It's now just the fact that I'm going to be here. I've earned this. Give me this picture. So,
yeah. Like, Angela, I love, there's a famous picture I've seen online of this man and his son, and he's taking a picture with, I believe, Buzz or Woody, and he crops the kid out, and he's like, well, this is my childhood, not yours.
That's great. I could see myself doing something like that, but yeah, that's really funny.
I would definitely do it if I went with my nephew and it was like Chip and Dale or like Max from Goofy Movie. I'd be like, get a picture.
That's funny.
It's mine.
Love it.
So before we wrap up, I do want to do a quick speed round based on Disney.
Okay.
So who is the best Disney sidekick?
Rhino from Bolt. I had that answer ready because that's probably my favorite overall Disney character. He's the hamster from the movie Bolt. And I love his confidence. I love how brazen he is. And he is so loyal and just like he's a fanboy. I love Rhino. So Rhino is my favorite sidekick.
Best musical scene.
Oh, best musical scene. You know what? I'm probably going to go with the Central Park scene in Enchanted, or the opening scene to the Muppets, the one that came out in 2011 where all the Muppets are dancing. I think that is a great introduction to that movie.
2 Amy Adams movies.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Not biased at all.
Of course.
The Disney character with the best wardrobe.
Disney character best wardrobe. I'm going to say Belle. Only because she looks great in the blue at the beginning of the movie, and she looks great in the yellow in her ball gown. She and her Christmas outfit, the red, Enchanted Christmas, she looks great in all colors. I think Belle is beautiful. She was probably my first Disney crush before, like in the 90s, before I got to Amy Adams. I loved me some Belle. So I think Belle's wardrobe is fantastic.
The yellow dress, that ballroom scene, I think is the best Disney scene. It's just so good. Magical. I was so upset with the live action with the dress. I was like,
well, I couldn't get past the fact I'm watching Hermione Granger be Belle. I know it's Emma Watson, but that's all I saw. Where I was like, Aloha Mora, what's happening? This is so weird.
It is hard. I mean, it's like the Harry Potter kids, really, they got blessed but cursed, because you're always going to be. I always say, if I was one of those 3 core ones, I wouldn't have worked a day after the last film wrapped. I would have been like, take my check and I'm retiring.
Daniel Radcliffe has done enough now where I think he's removed himself, and I can actually watch him in a film and not think Harry Potter. Emma Watson and Rupert Grint just haven't done enough. I mean, they've been in a few things, but it's like, I keep going back to that. It's like when I watched Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic, I saw him in Titanic in every movie he did for probably 12 years. Until I finally saw maybe The Revenant. I was like, okay, this is Leo. Or Inception. This is Leo. This is not Jack Dawson. I get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Blessed but cursed.
It's a morbid question, but I'm always like, if I got to, interview like Tom Hanks or like Leo, I would be like, when you pass, I know it's morbid, what is the character you think they're going to show at the Oscars in your in memoriam or whatever?
That's a good question. That's a great question, actually. I love that.
I wonder if like they think about that, or if their agent knows, because anything can happen. I know it's morbid, but I am interested to know what they think their most iconic moment is in their career.
I feel like Tom Hanks would have been somebody to have that conversation, especially since he's in his 60s. I don't know that Leo would have had it, because I don't think Leo's in his late 40s, but I don't think he is somebody who's like, I'm going to think about the future.
For Tom Hanks, I do think like he's going to be the one where he gets like the montage, but it's going to end with Forrest Gump on the bench. Like, we all know it. Leo, I feel like he might get a montage, and then they're gonna, obviously, Titanic, King of the World, but there are some actors where you're like, I don't like Sylvester Stallone. It's obviously Rocky, but I don't know. It's just a question. Viola Davis would be a good one, because she has so many good roles, but I don't know if she's had the role yet. Also Denzel.
Denzel would be tough because he's got 2 Oscars. But then again, it's like he won an Oscar for Training Day, but his Training Day and that psychopath Alonzo, is that the one you want to show during his
his last moment?
His last moment, maybe. Well, then again, do you want to show his character from Glory getting whipped by in the Civil War? Again, it's like, we could probably come up with a few things that might be a little different. I don't know.
Put the preacher's wife.
Preacher's Wife, or Philadelphia, in the courtroom scene in Philadelphia. He's phenomenal in Philadelphia, and he's a hero in that movie. So maybe something like that too. And anything where he's laughing, because Denzel has the best visual laugh ever. Watching him laugh is just so great. So such a weird thing to say, but watching, like, you can see it now in your mind, him laughing, you're like, oh, that makes me happy.
Oh, I totally get that. I watch RuPaul's Drag Race, and there's a few queens whose laughs are just so infectious that sometimes I'll just put on a clip of them laughing to make my day.
That's so fun. I love it.
So we got a little morbid there, but let's pick it up. The Disney character you'd love to spend a day with at Disneyland or World.
Disney World, Disneyland. Disney character wants to spend a day with Disney World, Disneyland. Probably Flynn Rider. I think I'd have a good time with Flynn Rider. I think he would be fun and not so serious. Problem is, all the girls would have flocked to him, so that would be a problem. That's why you wouldn't say Jack Sparrow, because all the way girls would have flocked to Jack Sparrow. But I think Flynn Rider would be a fun hang. I think that a lot.
You also wouldn't pay for anything that day. I feel like he'd swipe everything for you.
Oh yeah, that'd be easy too. And just, do I call you Flynn? Do I call you Eugene? What do you want me to call you? I don't know.
And lastly, the last Disney movie that made you cry.
Inside Out. Inside Out gets me every single time. And I guess that's because I'm a parent now, but there's a scene towards the end where Riley has run away, and she comes back and she starts crying, and she's like, I miss my friends. I miss my home. And the parents kind of kneel with her, and they're crying too. And I can walk through our room and that scene is on, and I'm like, I'm going to keep walking. It gets me every single time. I know most people say Bing Bong, and that character, what happens to him. And that's really sad. But that family unification at the end is just so touching, and the music, just all of it just gets me. I love it.
Yeah, I went into Inside Out not knowing kind of what to expect. So Bing Bong definitely took me out. My favorite movie is also Drop Dead Fred. So the idea of imaginary friends and all of that really hit me. But my last one, I think, was Coco.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one, too.
I was at a doctor's office like after it came out, obviously on DVD or whatever, and they had just started playing it in the waiting room. It took so long for them to see me. I got to the end, and I was like, I was pretending I was sniffling and sick, so people didn't know I was crying. I was like, oh God. I was like, oh Jesus, so sad. But I mean, if most Disney movies, I cry at The Little Mermaid, the animated, when King Triton like puts his like Triton down and like she transforms. I'm like, he's letting her go. It's so beautiful. Which that was the one thing about the remake. I was so mad they didn't put that scene in. I was like, oh, that silver dress where she walks out of the water. I wanted it.
Yeah, well, maybe if they hadn't had Eric sing so much, they could bring in something like that. So,
poor Eric.
I will say that this about Little Mermaid, Davine Diggs was a phenomenal Sebastian. His Sebastian was so good. His voice is so great in that. The other characters like Flounder, I was like, this is a wasted character. It wasn't done very well. I did not like Flounder at all, but I thought Davine Diggs as Sebastian was surprisingly really well done.
That's where I'm biased because Sebastian's my favorite Disney vocalist, I guess you could say. Yeah. So I was like, didn't hold up. I like have Under the Sea on my workout playlist. People think that's weird, but it just gets me hyped. Right. And Flounder was questionable. Because they're talking about the live action Princess and the Frog, and I was like, did you see that fish? Do you want to see a frog like that?
Yes, that's a good point. And Princess and the Frog is one of those, I don't want to say flawless because no movie is really flawless, but that's a really good movie, and I feel like that should be untouchable because that's just such a good film. And the characters are good, the animation is beautiful. Of course, I feel the same way about Tangled. I feel both of those movies are just so well done on the animated screen. I'm like, why do you want to chance a blowback of making these live action films when there's a great chance they won't be very good? What are we doing here?
And it also hasn't been as long as like a Little Mermaid or Aladdin. So I think give it some time. Let the animated ones kind of stay classic for a little longer. Plus, I heard
they want to do a live action Moana. Moana's 5 years ago. I'm like, seriously? You might as well just do a live action and an animated at the same time and just put them both up the same weekend and just get it over with.
Yeah, just toss them out and see what sticks.
Right?
Yeah, Moana is too new. I mean, they're probably going to do Encanto next. Like, come on, guys. I want more animated. I'm more of a cartoon person, but what are you going to do? That Disney's not calling us, like you said, for these decisions.
Right.
They should, though. They should call you.
Hey, I'm here for it. Yeah.
So before we wrap up can you remind people where they can find you online?
Yes. The best place to find me is on Instagram at @TheMagicOnADollar. I'm on a lot of places too, but you can start there, and you can find my link tree, and I'm all there. And of course, the Main Street Electrical podcast comes out every Thursday, and the Deucecast movie show comes out every Wednesday. So you can hear my nasally drone twice a week if you choose to do so.
Well, David, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about your live action Disney crush and so much more today. And everyone, you can find all of that information below. And until next time, as always, keep crushing it. Crushgasm is part of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network, alongside some other pretty cool shows, including An Evening at the Movies, Crime, Rewind, Literature Reapers, Love is Black, Masturbators, Men Are the Prize, and The Simplest. You can find all of us and more over at idnmtrpodcastnetwork.com.